Well, is Texas in financial distress? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you get to the site, go to the top of the page. There's a link to the Ask Prudent Money, and you can send your question in. We'll get you taken care of. Very easy way to get information. If for some reason you sent a question in and did not get any response from us, probably means that your email request is sitting in a spam folder, or we might have just overlooked it. If either of those happen, in other words, if you don't get a call back, just give us a call and let's get you taken care of. All at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Yesterday, I had Jennifer White in on the program. She's with J.D. Power, and they talk about trends and things they're seeing with consumers. And yesterday, she was talking about the demand for vacations and the demand for tourism, how that's still very, very strong. You know, it's just something about vacations that people get very crazy about. It's the best way I can say it. In other words, you can take this or you can take that, or you can make me pay this, but do not take my vacation away from me. And they're very committed to going on those vacations, whether or not they've got the money or whether or not it's going to go on a credit card. I've seen it way too many times. Not judgment. I've seen it. And people value, the best way to put it is, people value going on vacation more than anything. As soon as I got off the air, I got an interesting email from a writer that I follow. And the title of it is U.S. Tourism in Steep Decline, Real Economic Toll. He goes on to say international tourist spending is expected to fall by $12.5 billion in 2025, marking a 22.5% decline compared to last year's peak. A projected $29 billion loss in overall economic, I couldn't get that out, activity could result from these declines, putting millions of jobs at risk across industries reliant on tourism. Hotels and motels alone could lose over 41,000 jobs. Restaurants could shed over another 40,000 jobs in the near future. Now, this is what is interesting to me, is that at what point do these numbers start to cause real inflationary concerns, inflationary pressures? Because you could look at it from one standpoint, and I think that this is the correct one to look at it. It's a supply and a demand situation. These losses that you're hearing me talk about of U.S. tourism being in steep decline will affect a number of these businesses to the point that where they will end up going out of business. I mean, you saw this with restaurants during COVID. Peel back all the reasons why it's happening and focus on it's a supply and demand issue. And that causes an increase in prices. And it's the best way to, I think that you can describe what potentially could start happening, and it may, like I said, it may already start happening based on some of the numbers I've seen, is this supply and demand situation slowly popping up in pockets of the country. Not necessarily the entire country, just parts of the country. So it'll be interesting as we watch to see where things are headed. President Trump made a statement about the 1929 stock market crash, which led to the 1929 to 1932 stock market drop, which was about 86%. Can you imagine that happened today? And of course, the Great Depression that happened. There was a trade war going on that historians collectively agree was one of the reasons why, not necessarily that it started, but that it pushed us deeper into the Great Depression. And he says that without these tariffs, that we will go into the same 1929. It makes no sense whatsoever. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Maybe you get some of the history correct on this, but tariffs would still put a strain, and we're starting to slowly see that build into the economy. I don't think it will just all of a sudden show up. We'll get an inflation report that says we're now dealing with mass amounts of inflation. I think it's going to be a slow developing process. But I just thought I'd point that out because there is a great demand for tourism. But with tourism being, according to that article, being down, what ultimately happens to prices to satisfy that demand? And does it get pushed to the point to where people go, I just can't afford to go on a vacation? Of course, that doesn't stop a lot of people, but maybe that's the situation. Now, I want to go back to something I talked about at the end of the program yesterday. And I follow, or actually they send me these surveys and that type of thing, Wallet Hub. And they had a report, this was back, about probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And they were looking at the states with the most people in financial distress. And they did that to shine light on the financial troubles experienced by people across the U.S. and to show where those difficulties are most pronounced. So basically, it takes the bottom 10 of the list, which is the most distressed, and the top 10, which is the least distressed. And I might add, the least distressed on this list is Hawaii. If you've ever been to Hawaii, you know why it's least distressed, because what a beautiful, beautiful place to go. Okay, back to, back to the report. So this survey says that at number 10, Alabama is number 10 on the list. In Kentucky, then Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Nevada. Number 3 is Louisiana. That doesn't surprise me. Number 2 is Florida. And number 1 is Texas. Most distressed people in the state with the most financially distressed people. Now, I've been following these surveys for a very, very long time. And generally, you don't see Texas mentioned in any of these lists because they're either in the middle or they're generally sometime they're around the middle. They're never almost on one of the top 10 or bottom 10. They just kind of, Texas in its statistics just kind of, not too cold, not too hot, just maybe about right, something like that. And then here we go, number 1, out of nowhere, most distressed, most people in the financial distress. So that surprised me a little bit to see that. Now, I received another report, and this report is the biggest collection account problem. So I would further interpret that to saying it another way is that the city with the highest level of debt collection occurring, and then the city with the smallest collection account problem. Biggest collection account problem, smallest collection account problem. So this was really surprising to me. Well, let's start off with the biggest collection account problem. At number 1 is Garland, Texas. Number 2, and keep in mind, any city and any state can be on this top 10 of biggest collection account problems. Number 1 is Garland, Texas. Number 2 is Fort Worth, Texas. Number 3 is Arlington, Texas. Number 4 is Lubbock, Texas. Number 5 is Henderson, Nevada, And then number 6 is Austin, Texas. Then 7 is Reno, Nevada. Then 8 is Plano, Texas. Number 9 is Houston, Texas. Number 10, Dallas, Texas. So you have Dallas at 10 and Fort Worth at 2. The only bigger shocker would be to me is if you had Frisco on that list. Frisco seems pretty, Frisco, McKinney all seem pretty financially in good play in a good place. We'll talk a little bit more about this and talk about what you do if you get in a situation where you're facing a debt collector on the other side of this break. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back. Hi, my name is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. So let me ask you a question. Do you know your numbers? Now, which numbers are those? They are your retirement numbers. That set of numbers is the single most important planning numbers you can know. Yet the majority of Americans don't even know them. Prudent Money Financial Services, sponsor of the Prudent Money Radio Show, specializes in figuring out those numbers and creating a game plan to make sure you're on the right track. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show weekdays at 3 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Hi, I'm Jill Taylor, inviting you to join me each Saturday morning at 11 o'clock for Choose Life Radio. You'll hear people from across America sharing their stories of faith, forgiveness, redemption, and restoration. Choose Life Radio will encourage you to fully appreciate the gift of life. You may also find help for you or a friend in need. So please join me Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock right here on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We're talking about the lists that show the cities across America that have the biggest collection account problem, in other words, debt collector issues, versus the smallest collection account problem. You know what was on the number 91 out of this top 100? Miami, Florida. That surprises me. But what really surprises me is two cities that have been in constant, horrible financial dismay. Chicago at 93 and Detroit at 94. That really does surprise me, meaning they have the smallest collection account problems. But folks, the biggest collection account problem hits just about every major city Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else who could be on there. I mean, Dallas-Fort Worth takes care of just about every, the biggest part of Texas city-wise. Houston, obviously, enormous. San Antonio is not on that list. But that is 8 of the top 10, all in our backyard, except for Austin, that show massive problems with debt collectors. So let me say it this way. If you are dealing with a debt collector, we have more resources through Prudent Money. Now I don't want to misrepresent this. We don't actually deal with the debt collectors. We don't offer those kind of services. But we have resources we can connect you to. We have people that you can call and find out what you should do. I can give general advice as to what you should do. But I mean, people who will get down it once it gets into a legal situation, that's kind of where my knowledge base stops, because I'm not an attorney, nor am I trying to play one. So there's no excuse to be dealing with these issues if you can get some help. And never think anybody's judging you. When I look at a bad financial situation, I always think about myself. Think about some of the dumbest decisions that have ever been made in mankind when it comes to money. I mean, how do you think I've learned all of what God has given me to learn? And we have a lot of resources we can send you to. And so anyway, just keep that in mind. Do not, and if you just have general questions, shoot them in over here, because I want to make sure you get taken care of. You first have to determine how the debt that you defaulted on got to where it is today. And you first start off, you miss a payment. Maybe you call and they put you on a payment plan that kind of helps you get jump started, gives you a little bit of relief. And then you miss another payment, and then all of a sudden you're in collections. Now, when you get into collections, you're not in collections that is afforded you protection of the Fair Debt Practices Act. You have zero protection, and you are talking with in-house debt collectors that work for, let's say, American Express as a good example. So they will try to collect it for about 2 to 3 months. It's different from company to company. And then at the point that they give up, they take it and they will give it to a third-party debt collector, which is mostly what you're dealing with. And so when they call you, it's so very important to make sure that you are calm, cool, and collected. Because they learn and they know how to push your buttons. They know how to scare you. If someone said you're going to go to prison, sometimes people believe that. If they're going to take your house, which they can't do that unless the debt is a lien against your house. But they threaten a lot of things to scare you, and it's effective, but rarely is it something that they can actually do. So they continue to try. You should always have them verify the debt, which means that they send you all the information about the debt. They've got to be able to do that. That's very critical. Now, when you have conversations with them, because they're going to call you all the time, make sure you take notes. Make sure that I've heard some cases where a debt collector will leave a threatening voicemail on a recorded device. Unbelievable. And that's just instant evidence there, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But you want, and as far as recording phone calls, let you determine through an attorney. We're not here to do that for you, to make sure that your state allows that type of thing. But you have to determine who owns the note, if they're using a third-party debt collector, or if a debt buyer buys that note, say from American Express, and now they own it and they are trying to collect the debt. That could also be the same thing. I mentioned the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act because that is one of the best pieces of consumer legislation, yes, I said it, coming out of Congress. Yes, out of Congress. And it spells out basically what a debt collector can do and can't do. And believe me, the vast majority of what's in that Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is what they cannot do. But they can't threaten you to do things like come and take you to jail and this kind of thing. So don't let that get you stir up any fear or anything like that. Plus, if they do that and you have evidence that they're harassing you, then you can turn right around, and if you have the right attorney, you can file suit against them for debt collector harassment, which is then gives you a lot of options. And I was Dean Malone, who used to do that kind of work. I was talking to him a long time ago when he was on the program, and he said you'd be surprised how many debt collecting companies just say, yeah, we did it, and they pay a fine or they pay a settlement and they go on, because probably 95% of the people they deal with don't realize that there are laws that are there to protect them. Now, you can send what's called a cease and desist letter. And if you send that, you got to realize that the debt collector has to stop collecting that debt. They can send you one more letter or a phone call stating that they've received the cease and desist letter, and now basically you've put them up against a wall, and the original creditor has to determine whether they want to sell the debt and be done with it, or if they want to file a lawsuit in the hopes of getting a judgment against you, which is pretty easy to do since people don't show up for the court date. But that is, yes, the cease and desist letter should stop people stop debt collectors from calling and trying to collect. But at the same time, it's a situation where you give them no choice but to potentially sue you and file legal action. And by the way, that they can do that for 4 to 4.5 years in the state of Texas. Some say 4.5 from the action that caused the debt to go bad, which is generally a missed payment. It's either 4 years, 4 months. The attorney can determine that. But once you get past that statute of limitations period, they have no legal recourse over you, that's a good thing. But the worst part of this, though, is if you do get a lawsuit against you, and you'll definitely want to get an attorney to answer that lawsuit and make sure that the debt collector knows that you've got an attorney involved. I've always had a theory, and I've seen this play out from people who've told me results of this when I would give them advice. I've always felt like that if you're going to get sued by a debt collector and 95% of the people are not going to do anything and you're going to get a judgment against them, that a debt collector is potentially going to leave the other 5% alone, or they're not as concerned with them because they've got an attorney. I don't know. I've seen it work. It's just something to give some thought to. But you want to avoid getting a judgment against you, because that gives the debt collector so much more opportunities and options to to collect the debt. And by the way, I'm not telling you all this as ways to get out of paying what you owe. I think you got to pay what you owe. And when I say pay what you owe, that means pay the original amount, not the trumped up charges that they've got for you. So the other question is, what if the debt gets sold? Maybe you have a debt nobody's interested in. Crazy as it sounds, you never know, because they're dealing with a lot of debt and a lot of collection type situations. So I hope that helps. If you need any other help with that, just shoot us an email, and we'll connect you with somebody that can help you out. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, we've got an answer for you. Please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.